All right. Good afternoon. It's 12:01 on Monday, June 17. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Board of Directors for Lawrence Community Shelter to order. I think I see that we have quorum, but just let me do maybe a roll call if we can. I'm present. Christina Gentry.
I'm present.
Thank you. Chuck Magrill.
Present.
Elizabeth Keever.
Present.
John Kriebel. No, he won't be able to make it. Rebecca Gaston. I have not heard from Rebecca. And Shannon Nowry. Okay, maybe they'll be meeting or joining us in a little bit. We have 4 board members, so we do have a quorum. We can proceed with the meeting. Is there? Oh, there's more people waiting. There's Rebecca, Shannon. Okay. Rebecca and Shannon, we just did a quick roll call to make sure we have quorum. Can you hear us? Or are you still connecting? I see you there, Shannon. All right. And Rebecca?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to proceed then. First item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second it.
I think that was Shannon. Did you make
Shannon
the motion?
moved and
Right.
Elizabeth second.
Motion is made by Shannon, seconded by Elizabeth to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is consider authorizing the executive director to execute an agreement with PEC for Lawrence Community Shelter improvements in the amount of $141,000. James, are you able to speak?
Yep, I'm here.
Do you want to maybe discuss this a little bit to queue it up for
Sure.
the board?
So we hired the professional engineering consultants to do a scope of work for shelter improvements, along with the pallet 32, which would be 32 additional pallet units for out in the behind the Lawrence Community Shelter. And so we hired them to write up the scope of work and to represent this project during a special use permit hearing with the Board of Commissioners. And so the Pilot 32 program.
Would that be the Planning Commission, James?
Say that the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission, is that the hearing that you're referring to?
There's a couple of different hearings that have to happen.
Okay.
So they're going to represent us on all of those. They're the same engineering company that did the village. Okay. So they're well versed with putting up the pallets and what it takes to do that. And so we hired them to do that. Some of the improvements that we needed that we hired them to draw plans for were to increase the restroom capacity on the inside of the shelter and to do a workup of how we would be able to provide or have more storage inside the shelter. And so they were able to put those plans together in that scope of work. And so their services to do this would be $141,000.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open it up to the board if there are any questions or discussion.
And James, this is Shannon. Now, will we be paying for this out of the CDBG kind of grant, or what bucket of money are we going to pay with?
To pay PEC and the pallets?
Yeah.
Or you just want to know the breakdown? So the money that we're going to use for PEC will come out of funding from the city. The money for the pallets will be paid for by the city. The money for the expansions to the shelter will be paid for out of CDBG.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
So this is Chuck. I've got a question on the time frame and the scope of this. So again, what's being defined in this work is both the exterior, the development of the pallet and some facilities to serve that, as well as enhancements to the interior, primarily. For the most part, it looked like it's primarily to the what had been the storage and the overflow quarters on the east side of the building. Now, time frame on this, it looks like PEC is saying it'll take them 3 months to create their documentation for construction. During that time frame, is the process going forward with the Planning Commission and the City Commission on approval of a special use permit, or is that in addition to that 3 month the PEC is citing?
It will all be done within the 3 months. So
Okay.
the goal is to get this approval so I can sign the agreement with PEC and they can start working on the plans. We will get on the agenda. I think we're trying to get on the agenda for August. So that would be within the 3 months to get all this done.
Any other questions? All right.
This is,
Well,
oh, sorry, this is Rebecca. I
ahead.
had one question. Just looking at this. So the full amount of the PEC proposal was 141,000. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And is that, how much of that is broken down into, or how much of that comes from the new requests we'll have for the city versus any existing funding that the shelter already has?
It would basically be covered with the addendum.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up is, should we vote on the request to the city before we vote to approve this, or make it conditional on getting the funding from the city?
I think either way would make sense. Would you
Does it
rather
slow it
just,
down if we make it conditional?
is there anybody from the city that might be able to speak to that?
Yes, Mitch Young, House of Liaison. I believe we have a June 24th or 27th deadline. I can't remember if it was the 24th or the 27th. That is when they need to get it into the application finalized into planning and developmental services, so they can get on the calendar. So we do have a little bit of a deadline, yes.
Okay, well, I feel like I'm comfortable making a motion now if we're ready for it.
Go for it. If anyone else has any other questions, we can consider that while we consider the motion.
You know, actually, now I'm thinking maybe we should consider item 4 before we, because I think I want to make my motion contingent on getting the city funding that we're going to discuss.
Well, the things we're asking, or we're asking the board for today, are basically authorizing James to sign either of those. So I think they're both kind of contingent, I think.
Okay.
Frame it that way.
Okay. I didn't know if there'd be more questions about the city or number 4 first. Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
Right, so, I mean, does PEC know that it's contingent on us getting funding from the city? I mean, part of it, we already have the CDBG funds for the interior remodel, but the pallet part, I mean, is contingent on us getting funding from the city. Are they aware of that?
Mitch, are you able to speak to
Yeah,
that?
Mitch Young. To answer that question, no. We were just waiting on a signature from James for them to move forward to meet the deadline, which is 24th or 27th. And I apologize. And then they'll be able to get started on that in the 3 months they talked about. Funding is not PEC doesn't have it. Yeah, funding's not a concern for them. It was getting the contract so they can get started. So we did not share any information with them.
But what I hear from Rebecca, a really valid concern, is that we're proposing to sign a contract that we do not have the funds to honor. And it sure seems like it needs to be contingent upon a commitment, if not an actual approval from the city for those funds to be issued. Otherwise, yeah, we're asking the board to approve something that we don't have the resources to do. Is that correct?
Oh, Misty needs to be let into the call. I think and there's Mackenzie too. Sorry. I don't see anybody else that's waiting to get in the call. I don't see Misty here either, Mitch.
All right, let me text her. She said maybe she's on the wrong one.
Okay. Oh, there she is.
You got her now?
She is joining.
Okay.
All right,
That was
Misty.
your question for Misty.
Misty, can you hear us yet? Misty, are you able to hear us yet? I think I heard you, Misty. There you are. You're pretty faint. If there's any way you could speak louder or change your microphone setting.
I don't know where my microphone is on this thing.
I think you're sounding a little better there.
Okay.
Yeah, just speak loud. I think so. The question that we kind of are wrestling with is about the timing and the contingency around if we approve this today without knowing for sure that the city is going to be good for the money. So maybe you can speak to that.
Okay. So, yeah, we have the money. That's why we're asking for it to be done. So this, your agreement would then mean that I can send our contract amendment to legal for approval. And then we would like to get it on the commission by I think it's July something, but I could be. No. But as soon as possible.
I think our concern is we're being asked to sign an agreement with PEC before we have any addendum to our current agreement with the city. And so it essentially obligates us for the 141,000 before we have the certainty that the city commission has approved the addendum to the agreement.
So what do you need to feel better about that?
That's a good question to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the opinion I don't love this way to do it, but quite frankly, what we know from the last 10 months or 8 months that we've been doing this is the city wants us to get these pallet sites open. They want us to use these pallets that they've already purchased. And they want us to be the agency that is emergency shelter. And so if what they're saying, they need to get the addendum to unlock the money, and if I understand correctly, it's not the full 140, it's just 80. Because I know
No.
the CDBG we have, I think
The funding?
the funding.
What do you mean the full 140?
Well, so the contract we're being asked to sign is 141,000. And so part of that is the interior remodel, which I believe, if I understand correctly, we're using a CDBG grant to do. Not sure where the 39 for the mezzanine is coming from. And then there's 80 for the pallet shelter village that will be out by, we need a different name. Out at the Lawrence Community Shelter. And so I guess, like, I don't love the sequence, but I also feel pretty confident that this is what the city wants us to do. And if what we need to do to get it moving is to agree to do this and then go ask the city, I doubt that they won't give us the money, because I think they're sitting on pallets that they purchased and can't use unless we agree to participate.
So let me help to clarify. I just shared the screen again with the page that describes the fees and how it breaks down. 80,000 for the pallet shelters. I think they labeled that a little bit off. Pallet, that's the pallet 32 project. And then mezzanine addition is inside the building. Interior remodel is also inside the building. And Shannon, I think what you're trying to explain is some of this is already funding that's been committed by the city to provide improvements. Some of it is money they haven't previously committed.
Yeah, this money is not for actual any product. It's not like brick and mortar. This is just for their services. So that's what they're charging.
Their engineering services.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah.
So
the-
then no CDBG money is really for this. Is that
No,
okay? Got it.
no, this will probably be ARPA funding.
Okay.
We have about 400,000 in ARPA dollars that we're giving.
So I think what their situation is, the timing isn't, you know, as clean as we'd like it, but the city needs this contract to be executed so they can take the next step. And so we have to just exercise our confidence that the city's committed to this work being done through LCS.
Charlie, could I ask
Mhm.
Misty a question? So Misty, if we approved James asking to execute an addendum to the 2024 LCS funding agreement with the city, and then also authorized James to sign this PEC contract contingent on getting the addendum with the city, does that work, or does that create additional problems?
Mitch, do you have the answer to that? If you do have the answer, you're on mute, so we can't hear it. Yeah, Mitch has been the one that's there.
Sorry, I was on another line. What was the question?
If, what we talked about earlier, like if we approved today that, James could get the addendum with the city, and assuming he gets that addendum with the additional funding, then that would be that's the precondition for signing the agreement with PEC. So is there, can we do it that way? Is there any downside to doing it conditionally like that?
I wouldn't think so. So Misty, when we had our meeting, James and I had our meeting with PEC and Jeff Crick, Director of Planning and Developmental Services. That was the deadline that they needed. And I apologize. I can't remember if it was June 24th or 27th, but that was a deadline that PEC needed. And they said they could meet it if they had this agreement and then we'll be able to meet our city commission meetings because it has to go through planning first. So do they know it's contingent? Probably not. As long as they get a signed document, we'll be able to move forward.
Okay, so it sounds like it's okay to do it that way. I'm a lot more comfortable doing it that way. And so I can make that motion now if we're ready.
Wait, I think maybe it's not clear. I think what Mitch is saying is we need to sign the agreement to let them start working on getting these documents together. And we can't wait for the city commission's approval of the addendum.
I think the city's addendum will require some of the work to be done by PEC. Is that fair to say?
That's what I'm understanding Mitch to say. Do I have that right or wrong, Mitch?
Yeah. So again, it has to go to planning commission before it goes to city commission. So in order to get to the planning commission first, that's why that's what their deadline is for, is to get on their agenda, and then they will get on the city commission's agenda. So if we push this back a month, only thing it's doing is pushing back your city commission a month.
Which then pushes back our
Yeah, but
addendum.
now you're looking at November, December for completion instead of October when you're going to need it.
Are we pushing it back if we have a conditional agreement?
Yes. Because then.
If you don't get a signed document to
document,
PEC,
yes.
yeah.
Now, the
We
way,
have the assurance from Misty and Mitch that the funds are there. And we just need formal approval from the planning commission and the city commission.
Chuck, were you about to say something?
well, just the PEC is listing their billing as subsequent to the month where work is done. So even if with pallet 32, there's an 80,000 price tag on that work, that's not meaning that has to be paid come July 1. I mean, that's early, maybe sometime in August. So theoretically, what we're hearing is that the amended funding will have occurred by that point. So it should provide us with that coverage.
Yeah, I don't think we'll need to pay it before the city gives us the money. But I think I understand clearly that to get through the process, we gotta have these drawings. And we can't get through the process until we can't get the drawings until we sign this agreement. We can't get through the process, right? And so I think we gotta sign the agreement if we want to move forward on this project.
I believe that, I mean, that's how I'm interpreting this.
Yeah, that's
And this
what I'm
goes
hearing.
back to our conversation last month. Like sometimes the bureaucratic process, it's just not always clean. If we had more money in the bank, it would make everything feel a little more comfortable. But I think going back to your earlier statement, Shannon, the city has been consistent that they want us to do this work. So it's really just to follow through on that. This is what we need to do next. There shouldn't be a concern about whether the city wants us to do this.
I agree. I'm prepared to go forward.
So going back to potential motion, do we want to just defer this for a moment and talk about the authorizing James to execute the addendum up to the amount of $680,050?
I think I'm fine with just doing it together at this point.
Okay. Well, if we do that, how does everyone feel about moving some discussion onto the addendum? Because that's slightly different conversation. Okay.
Okay, yep.
James, will you give us a little more insight then on the discussions you've had with the city around the addendum to the funding agreement? I know we've
Sure,
proposed a budget amount of $680,050.
sure.
Okay.
So do you want to put that up on the screen, Charlie, the budget amendment? So in talking with the city, the cost for Pilot 32 was always going to be requested by us through them, and now's the time to request that funding. And so in this budget consideration amendment proposal, I've broken down what it would cost for Pilot 32. A lot of these construction costs were generated by Mitch based on how the village was constructed, and these are some of the costs that would be to do this the same type of structure at the Lawrence Community Shelter. So that's where these costs come from. The contingency funds were put in at 5% because we just need a contingency fund when it comes to new construction and some of the unforeseen things that could happen. The staffing model was put together by Karen and myself. Karen is our director of finance, and we estimate the cost for staffing the Pallet 32 would be at 75,000. We're not proposing to do. We're only proposing for 2 shifts, and that would be for second shift and overnights, because the Pallet 32 would be for our night by night program. So there would not be a need for any staffing during the day. And if there was, we're at the shelter in case we had people that needed to be in the pallets during the day. We could staff that with the staff we already have at the shelter if we needed to. The PEC contract is 141 that was put in there. And then we have other budget adjustments, which are personnel. These are cost of living, the cost of living wages that we've improved for the staff, that we've approved for the staff, not improved. Then we have maintenance and repair costs. Upon coming in January, we assessed the shelter for what some of those needs were, and we spent more money that was budgeted, and so we need to recoup that, the 40,000. And I think these were some of the conversations that we already had with the city commission, that we would be coming back for some of these costs. I think the goal was to do this in April, but of course we're past April, so we're doing it now. And professional contracts are the costs that we incurred during the union budgeting considerations. So the union contract budget. So the total is 680,050.
Thanks, James.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is there any question or discussion from the board?
I have I guess the only one item that I really see as a question on this is the 75,000 on the staffing for Pallet 32. And again, maybe I'm unclear on how this time frame is going to emerge, but if BEC is saying 3 months for contract or construction documentation, I'm going to assume that if that occurs, then bids are let out, and subsequent to that, best case scenario is that Pallet could be operational for 1 month in 2024. Is that staffing represented as 1 month's worth of staffing, or is that represented as something greater than 1 month of staffing?
Karen Sibillio here. For the staffing for Pallet 32, we were trying to figure out when Pallet 32 would be functional. And so the date that I was given was, I think, July or August. So that would be wages for the remainder of the year from July or August. I can't remember when I started it. I'd say it's a good 6 months worth of salaries there for, I think 6 people is what we budgeted for.
So in other words, that could definitely be trimmed down prior to submission.
Yeah, I think as long as we know for sure when we're gonna be operational, when we need to have these things in place, when we need to have staffing in place, essentially, yes, that could be trimmed down some.
On the, what I put on the agenda was authorizing James up to this amount. So if the city's addendum is lower, he'd basically have authorization up to that total amount. Are there any other questions or discussion? All right. Rebecca, you suggested you might be ready to make a motion, or considering both of these in one motion. Is that what you'd like to do?
Okay, I'll try it. Okay, I move that the LCS board authorize the executive director to execute an addendum to the 2024 Lawrence Community Shelter Funding Agreement with the City of Lawrence up to 680,000. Where they're, let me see if I have. Looking for the exact amount, up to $680,050. And that we, as a board, authorize the executive director to execute an agreement with professional engineering consultants for LCS shelter improvements. PEC project number 240149 up to $141,000.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, motion's been made by Rebecca, seconded by Shannon to authorize the executive director execute an addendum to the 2024 Lawrence Community Shelter Funding Agreement with the City of Lawrence up to the amount of $680,050, and to execute an agreement, and for the executive director to execute an agreement with professional engineering consultants for Lawrence Community Shelter Improvements, PEC project number 240149-000, up to the amount of $141,000. Is there any discussion about the motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Who first did it?
Shannon did it first. Elizabeth did it second.
Good job. All right. Motions are made by Shannon, seconded by Elizabeth to adjourn at 12:34 p.m. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.